if you want to run us through that 6 month phase in the pre-selection courses that you mentioned just then.
So now what they've got is, which even back I'm not fully aware of what the process is now, to be honest with you. But back when I did it, over 20 years ago, it was you had to attend a pre-selection course, and I think in actual fact back then, like the parachute regiment guys didn't have to do this. If I remember right, there was like everyone except paras that were on the course because I think there was such a high influx of parachute regiment guys. There was so much familiarity and history there that I think it was more evident that it was guys who were from other regiments who maybe weren't so aware or what was to be expected, and to just basically separate the wheat from the chaff. It was a fucking weeding exercise to get rid of the tire kickers that would ultimately turn up just to go do day one and go, I tried selection once. But that's all admin, right? So again, it's time, it's money, it's admin. I think what they tried to do is as a military whole was to condense that and basically filter out people who weren't good fits right from the beginning. So there was a pre-selection course that you'd have to apply for. Then you get accepted on that. Then that was like a 3 day. I think now it's 5 days, but I think back then it was like 3 days of solid beastings and tests. That was actually a cheeky little 3 days in itself, and it was pass fail. It wasn't necessarily pass fail; it was just recommended or not recommended. So if you did shit, they'd be like, "Nah, you're nowhere near," and might never be, or you're close but no cigar. It's go away for a year, come back, or it was you're ready to go now, get on the next course, which is what happened to me. I actually went on there very fit, very up to date with my military knowledge and all that. I was really prepared for the pre-selection course because I was hyped up for it. So I was like, holy shit, every single part of this is really gonna make a difference. So I prepped myself well for the pre-selection. When I went on the pre-selection, I didn't piss it, but I mean I did very well on it. So I had planned to go 6 months later, and they says, look, we'll see you January. This is November. We'll see you January, and I was like, oh, holy shit, I've got like 7 weeks to prepare for this thing. And I was like, oh, will I be ready? I was like, yeah, you'll be fine. Don't worry. It's a course. You get fitted on the course. Don't worry. Just don't overtrain. That was the biggest thing, actually. Don't overtrain was what the main instruction was.
Which is actually massively ahead of what you'd expect these days, because there's still a pretty negative culture in the army of I need to be doing more than the next guy, otherwise I'm going to fail. And that we've got a lot of clients with Omnia, Johnny and I, that are we're there to help calibrate those army lads with bigger ambitions to help keep them
Yeah.
robust but adapting in the right direction rather than just beasting themselves into oblivion. And then
Yeah.
when you're on week 2, week 3 of the hills, you fall apart because you've gone into it too
Yeah.
fatigued.
I mean, I was completely uneducated in this. I mean, if I'd have known then what you know now, even what I know now, but let's say I knew then what you know now. Uh, that could have been a good thing, could have been a bad thing, because it could be too you could become too consumed by the detail and then
It might give you false confidence as well.
get in your own head, or it could be the best thing ever if you utilize it properly. But all skills and knowledge are only useful if you utilize them in the right way. So back then it was very, very basic, and I think this is something I always go back to, is like keeping the main thing. But back then it was very basic advice I got, really basic, to the point where it was almost like they were saying, don't do much because I was young and I was fit. The thing is, I had time on my side, and they know for a fact that the course itself, you don't have to be at peak. In fact, you're best not being at peak when you're on day one, week one. Let the course get you fit. Just don't turn up completely unprepared, because you're not going to make it past day one probably. But if you can pass an army combat fitness test, which is an 8 miler with 44 pound in your back, you can do the rest of the course. If you can pass that and not half die, then you'd be all right for the rest of the course. So the hills phase is like 4 weeks, 4 weeks, and you start off as a big group. You do like we used to call it, I think they called it walkabout, where you go out in large groups where you do some navigation techniques. You each get to do a little bit. It's very kind of methodical and monkey see, monkey do type fashion, and then you go into groups of four after like the first few days, and then groups of four the second week, first half of the second week. Then it's pairs, and then from day one, week three, you're on your own. So you kind of do half the hills with someone or more people. Then you do the last 2 weeks by yourself. It's an individual test. But there's loads of people in the hills. You obviously just, you're individually tested. So you are essentially on your own.
And you're in and out of base, aren't you? But it's
Again?
you're in and out of base, and the real challenge from it psychologically, and where you sort of separate, for want of a better phrase, the men from the boys,
Yeah.
is waking up each morning thinking, I've got to do this again. I've got to do this
Yeah.
again. Oh, do I want to do this again? My hips are hurting. What was your experience like with that?
It's like in business, if you have a good week making money, how many weeks can you do that for in a row and keep doing this, having the same performance? Because you'll know, like in business, so people that are watching this that are in the business world, they'll be tuned into the fact that it's the basic things done repeatedly well that really make the difference, not something new and shiny every single day to try. It's consistent basics. That takes patience, that takes grit, it takes determination. And with selection, it was the simple fact of waking up in the morning, knowing what's to come, or worse, knowing you've got to do the shit that made you really painful yesterday. You're going to have to do that again and then some today. And then tomorrow you're going to have to do it again
And it's
and
stacking
again.
day on
And,
day
it,
on day on day,
and
isn't it?
it's only getting the weight's only getting heavier, the distances are only getting longer, the terrain's potentially getting worse. And that takes a lot of start and stop mentality of bookending that day and going, right, that's done, it's in the past, fuck that off, and then worry about the day that you're on one day at a time. So one of the things is to not overwhelm yourself and think about 2 weeks down the line. Be on week one and think of an endurance march, which is 65 Ks, and going, oh my god, we only did like 14 Ks today as a group, and I'm kind of, I'm tired. So 65 Ks in 3 weeks from now, or 4 weeks from now, how am I gonna do? I'm gonna be by myself. It's a long distance. It's heavier weight. The fact of the matter is, all you need to do is chunk everything down a bit like goal setting. So don't think about the big picture all the time and then overwhelm yourself. Just go, today I've got to get up and I've got to make sure I'm prepped to do this. And at the end of that day, I'm going to be done. I'm going to be sleeping. I'm going to be eating. I'm going to be bookending that day. And the next day, just think about that day. And then when you're out in the hills, it's one step at a time. It's a bit like, you've probably heard people saying this. I think David Goggins has even said this type of thing where they go, I only have to get from this point to that point, then I'll think about the next point when I get there. And it's true. It's a bit like being on a treadmill. You just go, right, however you can psychologically deal with it the best, whatever fits your personality the most. You've probably done a million versions of this almost, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you
From an
either
ultra
go,
training
I'm
point of
thinking
view.
about it a minute at a time, or every 2 minutes. You break it down however you want. Um, and that's what I would say is the difference is that just keep getting up, keep showing up every single day when it's dark, when it's cold, when you're tired, when your feet have got blisters, and going again.
So lads dropping around you like flies, directing staff giving you more and more to take on, fatigue's
Yeah.
increasing, pain's increasing, questions about yourself are increasing. How did you deal with those lads dropping around you? What did that do for you psychologically? Did it put a fire up your arse, or
It's,
did it weigh you down?
yeah, it's the best thing ever. And yeah, I mean, I don't really understand, and this isn't wanting people to fail, but at the end of the day, you know it's a competitive. They have to lose numbers. They can't just take on every single person that attends SAS selection. They can't take on 50% of that. There is essentially a capacity of badged troops at the end. So if they have 250 people going the hills and miraculously all those people are just getting through it, they don't have the capacity to take 250 people to the jungle, logistically or otherwise. So they have to lose people, right? And as history would prove that it's always happened, that's just been the pattern. But when people start to drop around you, you know, when you're part of a large group of 250 people day one going, oh my God, am I out of my depth? Psyching yourself out and getting in your own head. And then all of a sudden you're still there when there's 100 people there. That tells you, that tells yourself that, well, if I'm in the 100 that's still here and there's 150 people not here, something I've been doing is more than what they did. So the narrower that channel is in and the less the numbers become, you gain energy from that because you're still in the mix, you're still in the fight. and that can only ever be a good thing. So psychologically, it's actually a really good thing for the mind. And I alluded to that on the Human 24 podcast as well when it was on it about the one day that I really remember when I was having the shittest day ever, and someone who I perceivably thought was, way more advanced and more experienced and bigger and stronger than I was, just just basically wrapped his tits in front of me, right in front of me, and I was like, and suddenly I was just like, it was like a rock up your ass, because that wasn't in my mind. I wasn't contemplating that. So I'm going, well, I must be mentally stronger than he is because he's just done something that I've not even contemplated.
For clarity,
So that gives you, it changes
wrapping
your
his tits,
beliefs.
meaning pulling out voluntary withdrawal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, and voluntary withdrawal is like something that it's completely an individual thing. People have got the reasons, and I think when people do that, again, it's not, you put a bigger consequence in the fact that, would he have done it if someone held a gun to his kid's head? Then likely not. But you either want it or you don't want it, and the more it means to you, then the more reason you have to keep going.